Hey, this is Mark with the Practical Still.
I
You're with
am.
Dan Cavallari in the
That's
world
me.
headquarters.
I am here.
Yeah,
In my own garage.
in your own garage, which is the does double time or triple time or quadruple time as a recording studio and a bike shop and
Whiskey
whiskey a thing
paraphernalia. I
Look at
don't
this
know.
beautiful barrel.
Yeah.
But we're going to pick up where we left off before. So we've been hanging out talking about the Boulder Spirits, the Adventure Pack, and all the different expressions. Before we covered the bourbons.
Yeah.
There's a straight bourbon, there's a bottled and bond bourbon, there's a sherry cask finish bourbon. Now we're going to look at the American single malt. So the founders of Boulder Spirits are single malt kind of people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why so much of their whiskey has a lot of malt in it. Now we're going to forget about all that corn nonsense and just have malted barley.
Yeah.
But before we go on, remember, this adventure kit is super cool. You can get this anywhere you get Boulder Spirits whiskey. But it's got this cool little map in it, and it tells you all about the kind of things they do with the whiskey and the way they proof it, the oak they use, et cetera, and so on. And there's this super cool little QR code which takes you to a video of actual professionals talking about whiskey.
Not us.
Professionals are overrated. So if you believe that too,
Yeah.
stay tuned and
Yeah.
we'll talk about
Yeah.
whiskey. But it's fun. So now we're going to look at the American single malt, huge category that's been growing over the years. Dan and I have been just shocked at how good a lot of these small distilleries are.
Yeah.
And look, we're the first ones to say we were just wrong. Like a lot of people, we assume new distillery, young whiskey, not good. That's not true at all. They're making delicious
They really
whiskey.
are. I'm a pro at being wrong.
We're so good at it.
Yeah.
So we're going to look at a couple things. You don't really, one thing you don't really see. So we're going to look at the American single malt,
Yeah.
straight up and down. We've been
drop that
drinking,
one.
so we're dropping bottles. This is going to be a 94 proof American single malt, 100% malted barley, made in that gigantic 1,300 gallon copper pot still. New barrel, 53 gallons, level 3 char, 3 years minimum.
Okay.
Then we're going to move on to, believe it or not, a bottled and bond American single malt whiskey.
Whoa, that'd be cool.
That's two worlds you don't normally see collide, a bottled and bond and a single malt. So 100 proof, because all bottled and bond whiskey has to be 100 proof. The rest of the things are generally the same, except bottled and bond also has to be at least 4 years old.
Yeah.
So minimum 4 years old.
And if you're curious about how we felt about the bourbons, you can watch that video
Up there.
right there. Yep. Right there. And Mark had an interesting favorite of those three.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unexpected, but we're not going to ruin that. Watch
Mine
the
was
video.
pretty expected.
And then we're going to finish it with American single malt peated.
Ooh, I like Pete.
Yeah, cool. So let's get started.
Yeah. I like Pete a lot. I'm a Scotch fan.
Pete's a good guy.
It's interesting. He's okay. It's interesting, the American single malt movement, because I think Colorado has been sort of ground zero for that. Really,
Stranahan's is the oldest, I believe, one of the first.
Yep.
If not the first.
Yep. And there's a lot of them here, and I think it's been an interesting expression of single malt in general. And so these have been fun.
92 proof.
90 proof.
Single malt, which means 100%.
And this is
single malt just means produced in one place. The malt is malted barley, so there's no weird mash bill of corn and rice, just 100% malted barley.
And this is a 3 year, yeah?
That's minimum 3 years old.
Okay. So I guess tell the folks at home, single malt versus a bourbon. What are the notes that they're going to notice?
Well, so when you have bourbon's predominantly corn. Corn doesn't have a ton of flavor on its own. It's got a lot of sweetness, and that's why they use things they call flavoring grains. So there'll always be in a bourbon rye or wheat and malted barley and other grains. But those are the grains that have a lot of flavor inherent to the grain rather than the process and the interaction with barrels. Malted barley being one of those. Single malt whiskey is 100% malted barley, so a lot of flavor in that by itself. The difference between American single malt and a Scotch or an Irish single malt is that American single malt gets aged in new barrels. A lot more action going on earlier with that whiskey in a new barrel than it is in a used barrel.
So I'll say about this, we've talked a lot about Boulder Spirits because this was one of my bottles of the year last year. We had the Bottle and Bond bourbon, which was my surprise bottle of the year last year. It was really good. And we've talked a lot about young whiskeys and how it's sort of hit or miss with a lot of these young distilleries. Boulder Spirits has been across the board putting out some really good stuff. I do get some of that grappa nose, but across the tongue I don't get it at all.
I don't get what you get. That's tasty.
No, it's quite good. I talk a lot about grappa being the indication of a young whiskey. Young whiskey for me, and grappa is an unaged spirit in Italy.
Yeah, I don't get any of that.
I get it on the nose. Definitely get it on the nose.
It's like bready.
Yeah,
and fruity.
Across the tongue, none of it. It's wonderful.
It's got a bite to it at 92 proof.
No, I think the nose is the only place I get that grappa, and that would be where I'd be like, oh, this is a young whiskey. I'm not going to like this. Across the tongue, it's beautiful. Finish is quick, but it's really good.
I like that.
Yeah, I would agree.
And again, because we don't plan very well, the price of this bottle will be right there once I figure out what it is.
This is good, and it's in keeping with what we've said about Boulder Spirits. Again, we don't get paid for any of this. We don't have sponsors yet. We're looking for them. If you want to sponsor our video, but the fact of the matter is, Boulder Spirits has reliably been good. Deer Hammer is another one. Mark and I went Stranahan's. We went into sort of these young distilleries with a skeptical eye, saying, "Oh, we've been disappointed."
I like to call that
ignorance, stupidity, skepticism, whatever you want to call it. That's how we went into it.
And I'll tell you, sitting here though, while you're talking though, there is a youngness, or it's kind of grassy, on the nose. But gosh, across the tongue, it's delicious.
Yeah, I think that's what I identify as just that grappa, because it is an unaged spirit. But you can call it whatever you want. You get that on the nose, but across the tongue, it's not at all.
It's a wee bit grainy on the nose. I think that's just owed to the minimum 3 versus a few more years. But to be fair, to be a Scotch whiskey, I believe it has to be 3 years. So there's an awful lot of Scotch whiskeys that people are paying silly money for that are only 3 or 4 years old. Yeah. This is certainly as good as a lot of those.
Yeah, this is a good drinker.
Tasty.
Yeah,
depending on what we put here for the price. Yeah, I think it's certainly something I'd keep on the shelf.
For sure. To me, this strikes me as sort of an easy drinker after dinner, kind of sitting around the fire in the winter.
It's sweet, but not too sweet.
Yeah.
I'm going to add this to my infinity glass before we pour some more.
I don't have an infinity. This is my infinity glass.
Your gut is your
My gut is...
Next up, we'll go to the bottled and bond. So we get an extra year at least of age. We're still 100% malted barley. And basically we get 8 more proof points.
So I've never heard of a bottled and bond American single malt.
Well, the interesting thing is any spirit can be bottled and bond. I mean, brandy can be. I've got a bottled and bond brandy at the house right now. Malt certainly could be.
I'm stealing this.
You can have it.
Okay. Trade you. Yeah, a bottled and bond American single malt. And I guess, that's one of the things about American whiskey scene right now is that the single malt scene seems to be pretty big. So it makes sense that the bottled and bond designation would fit to that.
This should be just an amped up version. Now, because it's bottled and bond, part of that designation is that the whiskey comes from one distilling season. And so where minimum 3 years on that regular expression could be across, there could be some 3 year, there could be some 3 year, 6 month, there could be some 4 year in there. With the bottled and bond, it's got to come from that one distilling season. And generally there's 2 distilling seasons a year. So tightens it up a bit, and it's going to be at least 4 years old.
That's a good nose.
It's richer on the nose for sure. That grassiness is gone.
It's gone completely. So what I'm sniffing here is George T. Stagg.
Why would you do that?
Well, but just because I want to. So I started with that. There's science. It's science. No, I started with that. I wanted to kind of clear the nose palate, as it were. But that holds up. It's definitely hotter than a Stagg. But this is a 17-year-old Stagg versus.
There's no reason to smell those together.
I don't know what to do.
They're so different.
It's good.
It's tasty.
Wait a minute. This holds up versus a George T. Stagg.
That's nice, but it's just awfully far apart. Whatever. Do whatever.
I just want you all to know that I'm right.
Do whatever. Dan's right. That's delicious. When we were tasting the bourbons.
That is good.
We tasted the sherry cask finish. And I told you, I really had a hard time. I think I would have had a hard time nailing that as a bourbon.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that as much as I would at La Santa. This is in that same class.
Yeah. This is really peppery.
It is. Yeah. It's spicy.
Yeah. That's why I brought out the Deer Hammer, just because it is another American single malt. It's probably not apples to apples because this is a 92 versus 100, but
I don't get the chocolate out of this that I did out of that guy.
Yeah. This is good. It is definitely more peppery than I expected.
Yeah, I think if we were trying to give somebody a here's where you'd put this whiskey. I know years ago, I wanted an inexpensive bottle of scotch. There aren't really, at least in America, a lot of good inexpensive bottles of scotch. But really what I was looking for was an inexpensive single malt. This is something that's delicious.
Yeah.
If I don't know what this cost again, we'll find out. But if it's anything under $60, I'd be pretty happy with this.
I would too. I think the American single malt scene is a pretty interesting one, and I think it's one that I guess you don't really think of it as a category, right? But maybe we should. You know,
it definitely is. We just get hung up on bourbons and ryes. There will be none to be poured into the infinity glass because I drink it all. That was quite tasty.
This is good. It's definitely peppery.
It is. It's spicy.
Yeah.
But I think that owes to that extra age. You know, we talked before. You think 1 year difference? We don't think 1 year. Think 25% difference of time in the barrel, and that makes a big difference.
Yeah. So there's a 4 year minimum. Yeah, I think that's great for an American single malt.
Finish is a wee bit short. That's about the only thing you can knock on that. You know what I do, and I know you're thinking this because you're such a big cocktail guy.
Oh, me. Yeah, I love cocktails.
I'd Rob Roy this one to death. So 2 parts this, 1 part sweet vermouth, orange twist over the top. It's Italian. How do you not know what it is?
I've heard it.
French.
Yeah.
You should know.
Well, it's the same thing. It's Europe, right? Yeah. No, I think this is good. I would, again, be happy. And we keep saying this. You know, we're not sponsored, but I think, you know, we have Deer Hammer on the shelf because we thought it was worth being on the shelf. And I think Boulder Spirits has consistently done really good things.
It's not that we're not good enough to have sponsors.
We were sponsors.
We were actually given the adventure pack. I did have to buy a T-shirt, so there's some kind of offset there.
Dear Volkswagen.
Hey, how about some peated single malt?
Let's do it. I got a mark pour left.
So peated whiskey. So peated means that there's peat introduced in the malting process. So malting just means the grain is allowed to germinate. That germination has to be stopped. It's generally stopped with heat. Hundreds of years ago in Scotland, the only heat source that some of these places had was peat moss. And so they dried it and burned it. And that turns out that has a super funky smell. And that aroma gets into the grain and hence peated scotch. Now, I don't have any idea. I don't have any idea how they peated this or where the peated malt comes from. But I can tell you, in full disclosure, when I went by to pick up the adventure pack, Ryan there at the distillery was kind enough to just pull all the whiskeys out and we drank them to the point that I couldn't figure out how I was going to get home. I was shocked at how much I like this American peated single malt. I'm wondering if you're going to like it as well.
Dear Ryan. I love it.
Ryan,
bring me to your place.
You and Ryan would get along well. He pours pretty heavy.
He's got a Dan pour. I do like peat.
He has been at it a long time. It may actually be a Ryan pour.
The Ryan pour? Well, for our purposes, Dan pour. The peated...
I didn't pour enough. You can't get a good nose.
Oh, no, please. By all means, pour more. I have nowhere to be. The peated whiskeys are interesting.
Pee or be?
Say what?
Nowhere to pee or nowhere to be?
I'm in the garage. I can do whatever I want. The peated whiskeys are interesting because, as an American single malt. So, I've got a Lagavulin 16 up here. All right. That's got hundreds of years of, cachet. So it's apples to oranges. But if you can even come close to some of that flavor profile and that finish.
We'll see if I remember it. But what I remember from tasting this a few weeks ago is it's very subtle.
Yeah.
It's not a gigantic Lafroig peat. It's not the all.
But if you get any peat at that point, I mean, honestly. So there's a little bit of that young nose, but again, it's not overwhelming. It's a secondary nose.
And this is...
Don't ever drink
I'm going to save this. This is interesting. I'm going to save that and tell you what the minimum age is.
Okay.
Until you decide.
Don't ever stick your nose in my glass like I do.
Whiskey covers up all that nose funk you leave in the glass.
It's like chlorine. All right, that's impressive.
Delicious.
That's impressive. The fact that you can taste any of the peat at all is impressive.
And it's so smooth. It
is.
On the nose, it's hard. You don't
Wait,
get
what's
a lot
the proof?
Peat.
Give me.
On the nose, you don't get a ton of peat.
No.
On the palate, you get that sweet, bready, malty on the front, and then as it passes over, the peat just washes over you. It's delicious.
So it's 92.
Isn't it delicious?
It's 92 proof. That's good. Wow. You can do a lot with a little. That's the takeaway from this. I think that's a lot of peat for 92 proof and for a younger 3-year whiskey.
I don't remember. Maybe if you watch the video included there, they'll talk about the parts per million. That's how they measure peat, how many parts per million. So super peaty, funky Lafroig is, I believe, about 45 or 50 parts per million.
Yeah.
That Lagavulin sitting right there is about 35 or 40 parts per million. I'm going to guess this lower than that. But what's cool is once that peat washes over you, there's this lovely, almost like a juicy sweetness behind it.
It's good.
It's delicious.
I want to know where they get their peat.
I don't know. I didn't ask.
Oh, look.
Or I may have asked. This was the last thing we drank, so who knows what I was talking about.
I mean, we live in Colorado. Everything's on fire all the time. So I don't know. Maybe
who knows?
It's just forest fire.
Maybe it's just coincidence.
That's quite
Isn't
good.
it good?
It is. It is.
I think this has been fun. So, American single malt's a big thing. It's growing. There's a lot of different distilleries doing American single malt. It makes you wonder, are the Scottish just wrong? Maybe they should quit using all those used barrels and get some new barrels involved in there. But it's just delicious. You like peated whiskey? You know, I think you and I both are the same. We love peated whiskey, but we tend to hang out on Islay, that little island off the coast of Scotland that just makes super peated whiskey. Yeah. What if you had something that was just gently peated or reasonably peated?
This is it.
This is it. It's delicious. It's minimum age. That's what I was going to withhold from you. 3 years.
3 years.
Would you ever guess that at a
No, but I would buy this bottle if it was $60 or less.
Let me tell you what I'm going to go do tomorrow. Atlas Valley Purveyors, a nice little, it's a kind of an everything store. They've got a great butcher and all sorts of stuff, but they also have a store pick of the American single malt.
Dude, get it. Get it.
I'm going to go buy and buy it.
Yeah, like a sitting around the fire winter whiskey. This is fantastic.
The winter is coming.
It is coming. That's very Game of Thrones of you.
Thank you
yes. And to be fair, I think Deerhammer really impressed us. Boulder Spirits so far has very, very much impressed us. I don't know if Colorado is different than other states at this point in terms of, what whiskey purveyors are doing with their distilleries, but I've been impressed. It's been a wonderful journey to sort of have these younger whiskeys that are doing a lot with a little.
Yeah, I think the moral of the story is focus on the processes and what people are putting into it, and focus less on the age of the whiskey because it's just different. There's too many levers they can pull to make whiskey really good regardless of the age, and that's what you need to give a chance to. If you want something different than Jim Beam White Label, these are the distilleries you need to pay attention to, and they're going to be in your area. Like you said, it's all over the country. So there's great distilleries in Oregon, Washington State, a ton in Indiana that aren't MGP.
Start experimenting.
Start experimenting. It's worth giving it a try. And look, we always talk about whiskey about being sharing. If the only way to taste a whiskey is to buy a whole bottle, find some friends, split the cost, and share them. It'll be great.
I bought my friends.
If you haven't noticed, we share a lot of whiskey. All right. This has been super fun.
Yeah, that was fun.
Give it a try. Let us know what you think. If you've had American single malts that we haven't talked about, let us know what those are. And, we'll keep tasting them. We'll keep bringing them to you. Let us know what you think.
Cheers.
Cheers.